Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this Loveland Board of Education meeting. It's for the purpose of having a work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Ms. Massey for a roll call.
Reverend Eilert. Reverend Eilert.
Here.
Mr. Daugherty.
Here.
Dr. Lorenz.
Here.
And Dr. Schwetzenow.
Dr. Swetchnow will arrive soon, so we'll put him at his arrival time.
Mrs. Washburn.
Present. Okay. All right. So we have Dr. Swetchnow arriving. Before we go to the adoption of the board agenda, just a couple of notes. We do have, board members do have magnetic name badges in front of them on the table. There were 2 badges ordered for each board member. Possibilities is you could keep one and carry it around with you, and you could leave one here and they will keep it with the board materials. So that there'll be one here each board meeting. The other thing that I was going to announce is that taking the place of Mr. Giuffre this evening is Lindsay Massey. Mr. Giuffre is under the weather today, and so Lindsay's going to handle his duties for him. So Lindsay is our assistant treasurer, so she'll be helping this evening. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. We'll try to behave so that we don't make it difficult.
No guarantees.
Thank you. So then the first item on the agenda would be a motion to adopt the board agenda.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Doherty moved and Mrs. Washburn seconded. It is a fairly short agenda. And so it is the same as what you received in your message from Board Docs, and it is what those people viewing the meeting online can see on Board Docs. So are there any questions or discussion about the agenda? All right, then Lindsay, can we vote on that?
Mr. Daugherty.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzenow.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, and Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Motion carried. Then you'll see that what is on the agenda is first a superintendent update and then one human resources item. And I have a couple of announcements that I'll do at the end
Okay.
through that. So I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Broadwater for his superintendent update.
Thank you, and good evening. Couple items before I get into the presentation up there. Just to let the board know that I had a meeting this afternoon in a group of Hamilton County superintendents. There are 3 of us, Forest Hills Northwest, and myself from Loveland, along with Barbara Shaner, who's the legislative representative for OASSA and some other organizations. And basically, it is looking at the legislation of transportation and the models that kind of the constraints that we're dealing with right now. And so I felt it was important that I joined that group. They were nice enough to allow me to be on there. We had a very good conversation this afternoon. We'll follow back up, and we're looking at is there something legislatively that we can do to make sure we're helping our kids with the transportation. So just as a kind of an FYI that I am on that committee. The other thing, I would say thanks to the Loveland Athletic Boosters for the Tiger Ball on Saturday night. My wife Sue and I had a great time. I saw Dr. Lorenz there, and it's just a great group of individuals that are working very hard for our kids. I know they did very, very well with their fundraisers, and I say thank you to them for allowing me to be there, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Today, you saw that we announced February 14th, the day after the Super Bowl, we are going to have a calamity day. We called it a snow day, DEY, and had a little fun video go out. Working with the superintendents, I was able to work with the superintendents, come up with a video, and I thank Andrew Setters, our communications consultant, for putting it together. The purpose being basically it's an education outside of the school, right? And it's a chance for our families and for our community to come together. And you will see, I'm pretty confident you'll see other districts that are going to follow. And I think it's important for our kids and our families to understand there are things that we can learn outside of the classroom as well. So the biggest thing I want to make sure that everybody knows we're aware of, first of all, we know it's Valentine's Day, so the elementary, we're able to get the message out early enough. They will have their Valentine's festivities, so we won't lose out on that. But then the other item, what always comes up when you have a calamity day, is our elementary kiddos and being able to take care of them. I received a few emails from parents that were suggesting they're putting together some ideas in regards to how we could help those families that do need some help watching the kids in the morning, as well as our high school students need community service. So we've got enough time. We got about 2 weeks to try and put something together to help those families. And I would advise families, if they do have concerns, to let me know, and I'll see what we can do to help them out. So we got a little bit of time, but I know that's the hardship with some of the families as we do that. Okay, so moving into the superintendent's update, what I thought I would do is take advantage of the fact that we had a light agenda and hit a couple items. But first, I'll do a quick COVID update and kind of give you the idea of why we went to the mask being strongly recommended versus mandated. And the COVID update that I have there, you can see that the daily cases, we said that we were going to look for the cases to take a downward turn. They did take a downward turn, and it went pretty quick. I can tell you I received an update today. I wasn't able to get it into here, but it's gone down from 1,129 cases to 666. So it continues to drop in our attendance. I will review here in a minute, but it is very good as well. So that was one piece of data that we looked at. We wanted to make sure that the cases were dropping, and they did. The next slide shows the reproductive values, and basically, I don't want to sound like the expert. We've got experts here, but when you look at the reproductive values, when it's below 1, that means we're doing pretty good. And when you look at a reproductive value of 0.61, that's about as low as we've seen in a while. And so the reproductive value, what that means is from the experts that we listen to on Friday mornings out of Hamilton County, that we're in the right direction. We're moving in the right direction when it comes to the reproductive values and how much it is spreading. So that was 2 pieces of data that I looked at. The third slide that I will put up is every day I ask one of our administrative assistants to update our charts when it comes to attendance. If you look at the chart on the left for January 12th, we had 17.4% student absences, the percentage of kiddos that were out, and that was the alarm. That was getting pretty high, and that's where, if you recall, we took the Thursday and Friday reset, and it seemed to work pretty well. On the 28th of January, we are down to 6.2%. I don't have today's, but we are down to 6.2%, which quite frankly is pretty good no matter what winter you're in, because you've always got something in the winter that you're worried about. So those were kind of the 3, obviously a lot more data points we look at, but 3 telling signs that we're moving in the right direction, and letting our families know last Friday that we were going to go back to strongly recommending masks. On the video, we did say we were going to take down the sneeze guards, talking to some of the medical experts and individuals within the district. It's very difficult when you have those to make sure that you're sterilizing them every night. And it was getting to the point where we felt that they probably had outlived their usefulness in regards to protecting the kids. And so the sneeze guards did come down. We did put that on our video. I had a couple parents ask why, but the rationale is, A, we are going with the strongly recommended versus the mandatory mask. It allows our kids to move. We're no longer having to contact trace, so kids don't have to sit in the same seat. They can now get back to a little bit of normal where they move around in the cafeteria, and the sneeze guards were not needed for any quarantine or contact tracing. And so therefore the decision was made to take those down. So with that, I'll open it up if you have any questions in regards to where we are. I will tell you this week has been very, very good. The fill rate for our teachers is very, very good. And I just feel like right now, today, we're doing pretty well. We're moving in the right direction. So,
Mike, maybe one for you, and Eric, I'll put you on the spot, one for you, but what are you seeing in terms of masking levels in the various buildings for Mike? And then maybe Eric could pick up the explanation of reproductive value.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody understands that.
Yeah, in the middle school, high school, you don't see any difference other than the teachers. There are some teachers that have gone to where they're not wearing the mask. If that's what you're asking, how many, the kind of the prevalency of it.
Students and staff as well.
Yeah, so staff, I would say my short visits this week, I would say are probably about 50-50. The elementary I don't know, Garth, if you have any thoughts in regards to that.
Yeah, I was in the elementary school and the primary school today, and it varied by class. And I also think that it varied depending upon who the adult in charge of the room was, whether they were wearing a mask or not. I was in 3 different classroom spaces. One of the spaces, the adult had a mask on, and I would say about 3/4 of the kids had their masks on as well. I was in a different classroom in the same grade level. The teacher had a mask on, but there were probably less than half of the teachers with a mask. Then the 3rd classroom I was in was a different grade level, actually in a different building. And the staff member was not wearing their mask. And I would say it was less than half of the students as well. So I would say my anecdotal information on that is that it was a mixed bag between, anywhere from, around or under 50% to, clearly it wasn't that all of the students were masked. It wasn't that all of the staff were, and it clearly wasn't the case that everybody still was wearing their masks with staff or students as well. It was somewhere in the middle.
So a mixed bag.
And those were just 3 rooms that I happened to be in today. And I wasn't in any classrooms yesterday to speak of.
I was in a LECC classroom today. It was our 100th day of school. And so everybody dressed and looked older than they are. They kind of dressed like me, unfortunately. The classroom I went in, it's a classroom where they like Legos with Mrs. Schmidt. And I would say the kids, probably over at least half of them were when I walked in. But it seems like everybody is adjusting. It is an adjustment. It's hard for everybody if you've been in them for a while. And it depends on the family situation too. And had plenty of conversations with families, and everybody's been very respectful in trying to relay in regards to what their family concerns are either way. And so it's gone fairly well for the first 2 days, and I think we'll continue to see that as well. So
Interesting. I was over at the high school. I mentioned this to you. I was over at the high school the other day, expecting to not see a single mask. And that really wasn't the case. It's not that it was the majority, but a lot more than I had expected to see
Right.
there.
Yeah,
So people are making choices.
and it comes down to their family choices and in regards to that.
I would echo what you said, Mike, that based on the communication, we haven't gotten a lot of communications to the board, but in the dozen or so, some would have preferred that we kept the masks for the younger grades. Others are appreciative of the fact that we went to mask optional. But I think we just encourage families to continue to do what is right for them and to be in touch with the school if there are any concerns that they seem to feel about masking or any of the COVID protocols.
Yeah, thanks. We did put in our message to the families that if we do see, if something else shows up and it's a variant, then that may mean we have to make, alterations to our protocols as well. So we're going to continue to monitor the attendance as we go through, and hopefully by the time we get to spring and things get aired out, it continues moving in a good direction. But every day we look at it to make sure we're doing okay.
Have you had any conversation? I know a couple of the emails, and then I had one personal conversation with someone I know had talked to you too. Concerns about kids that are nervous without kids with masks, particularly in the lunchroom, where they had options before to be more isolated. Have you had any more discussions? Is that possible at all in the lunchrooms to give kids some options so that if they, particularly younger grades, if they want to have a little more spacing or be with other kids that are masked or whatever?
Right. What we asked our building administrators to do was, in their newsletters, let families let us know, let the building administrator know. Obviously, we want to do it in such a way that the child doesn't feel ostracized or anything like that. But sure, absolutely. If it's a communication piece with the families and with the building administrators, they're feeling anxious about where their student is eating and so forth. Our building administrators are very, very good about doing, and our counselors are very good about that. But if we know about it, we certainly would, if that answers your question.
Eric, would you mind?
Sure. So an R value is an estimated number, which essentially describes the likelihood of one positive case leading to more or fewer positive cases in the next period of time. And in this period of time, they've been using week over week numbers. This is the first time that I can remember seeing an R value of 0.6 in a very long time. partially because it's a function of how many cases there were and how many cases there are. So the steeper the drop between previous cases and new cases, the lower the R value will be. But the cutoff is 1. So essentially you have a flat number of cases if your R value is 1. I'm sick, I made Jonathan sick, the next week he made Kathy sick, the next week she made you sick. It wasn't expanding, but it was continuing. So with an R value greater than 1, so an R value of 2, you'll do, I made 2 of you sick, 2 of us made 4 of you sick, 4 of you made 8 of you sick. That goes up very quickly.
That's the exponential growth that we've
Exactly.
seen.
And with an R value less than 1, I'm making less than 1 person sick. So the case numbers drop exponentially in reverse. And 0.6, honestly, is the lowest I've seen in a long time. And I think that's primarily a function just that we had such a high number of cases that have fallen off so rapidly.
Okay, thank you.
Which is pretty much what had been predicted all along. Luckily, it happened. If we're ready to move on?
Hey, Mike, I've got just one little update. You mentioned some staff attendance. And
Yes.
it has been getting better.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we only had 4 unfilled substitutes, and that's for classroom teachers and paraprofessionals. And we had an 89% fill rate, which is back up to where we typically kind of like to be. Of course, we want it to be 100%. There for a while, before we moved to our asynchronous days, there were days where we were in the 50s, and then lots of other days in the 60s. And then today it followed suit, only 4 unfilled, and we were at 88%.
Right.
Just wanted to let you know.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to, since we had a little bit of time, I thought we would take advantage of having a discussion about, as we move into planning for next year, what we're thinking about as an administrative team for the district. And there are 2 positions I would like to talk about this evening. Before I do it, what I would say is when we look at positions, we're always looking at being FTE neutral, and Garth is going to present later in the business operation, or I'm sorry, the business meeting later in the month, kind of the history of the FTEs and where we are with full-time equivalents and people. So the goal is to make sure that we stay FTE neutral. If we cannot, then there has to be strong rationale. The 2 positions I'm going to discuss this evening are FTE neutral. It's a matter of just looking at, if you have a resignation or retirement, what's the best use of that FTE? First and foremost, the priority is in the classroom and making sure the classrooms are the appropriate class size. After that, we look at the support and how we can support each other as we move forward. So the first position I've got up here, the title we're looking at is Director of Communications and Community Engagement. And the rationale underneath there, we currently have a communication consultant, that's Andrew Setters. And he is from Hamilton County Education Service Center, which is HCSC. And that agreement is for 180 days at $113,040. So 180 days is not a full-time administrative contract. It's 180 student days. And so therefore, what happens is we get limited in the evening, or in the summer, we're limited because we're with 180 days. The second bullet there, the Chief Information Officer, is a position that's already listed within our job descriptions at Loveland. It has not been filled since June of 2020. It is listed as an administrative position. So instead of having this position titled the Chief Information Officer, we are looking at Director of Communications and Community Engagement. And the rationale behind that, communications, yes, Andrew does all of that, and this position will do all of that. The community engagement we're looking at as we move through the strategic vision planning, there's a lot of community engagement, and that person being able to have solid conversations and be personable, be available is important. It's not just about putting things on the paper. It's about being able to communicate and engage the community in what we're doing. And I hear from the board every time that we go to communicate, we have to make sure we're communicating to the entire community, right? It's not just our parents, it's not just our kids, it's the community as a whole. And so we felt that the term community engagement was important to put in there. The third bullet, the Director of Communications and Community Engagement position, we would contract that for 260 days, gaining much needed additional time. So you've got 180 days to 260 days. There will be some vacation days in there as part of the contract. But as you can tell, if we move it to an administrative position, first and foremost, now we see administrators sitting here, that administrator would be sitting here this evening because they're in charge of community engagement and communication. But we've also added a lot of days where we can work together in the summer to develop what our communication plan is going to be moving forward. So in my opinion, I think we have done a pretty good job with communication. We need to continue to step it up, and to be able to do that, we need to have this position to be a little bit more robust. The fourth bullet, the Director of Communications and Community Engagement position, is an administrative position allowing for more flexible hours, as we said. The fifth one, the net cost of the district would be minimal due to the already existing contract that we have with our communications consultant in Hamilton County. I did not want to put a value down there simply because we don't know exactly what it would be. We've already got 113,000 invested on 180 days. If you work out how much we're paying per day, my guess would be we're going to be less than that when we go to 260. But I don't want to put a specific amount in there, but I could tell you that for the amount of days and the amount of support we're going to get, I would consider it to be fairly minimal when you look at the two. And then the last, if you look at the goals that I've established, it includes increased communication along with the strategic vision, which this position will be vital for the implementation. So as we get started in the strategic vision, and we're going to get started this month, our communications consultant, Andrew Setters, is going to be a big part of it. Being able to present, being able to talk to people. It's important that I do that. It's also important that we have somebody who appears a little bit more impartial, unbiased. And so having somebody who can direct the conversations and me just participate is important as well. So that kind of gives you the rationale. There's more. I would open it up to questions. We are not asking for any action this evening. I'm just taking advantage of the fact that we have a little bit of time tonight to see what the appetite for the Board of Education is for this position. Like I said, we have on the books Chief Information Officer, which has not been filled since June of 20. This would be a director role, which is actually a different class, which would class level that's on the pay scale. So with that, I open it up to any questions.
I would just remind the board that there were administrative cuts that were made based on the non-passage of a levy in 2020, but that this was not an administrator position that was cut at that time. It was an additional net savings to the district because we did not fill a position, but it is not an administrative position that was part of the plan to cut expenses, reducing administrator positions. It just didn't get filled. It's actually been filled in a way all along with the consultant position. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that we're
So
not
if you were,
adding in an administrator.
if you were looking at FTEs or headcount numbers, we would have come down. If you were watching dollars for that function, they really didn't change very much because we weren't carrying the headcount, but we were paying the service center for those
Right.
somewhat same responsibilities.
I would interject a little bit in that there were cost savings involved with that because we accepted a lower level of service. 180 is even higher than we did the year before. So there were cost savings associated with not filling that role. And I was very frank about this in the levy campaign. I was a proponent of that in the idea of saving money, not at the levy campaign, the school board campaign. The idea of saving money by not filling a position that was being empty. But I also realized how much of a mistake that was because it was a very valuable position for what we need. At the same time that we were saving money by getting rid of an informations officer position, people were saying, you're not telling us what's going on. Why aren't you communicating with us? And my response was because we didn't fill that job. I think that Andrew is a perfect person for that job. And I think that this is a great opportunity to get a good person in that role to help us going forward to continue to engage with our community.
You know, and I think that there's, I agree with everything you just said, but I think that there's no but. There's also an added emphasis on community engagement with this vision of a role, not just sending communications out, but somehow getting out into the community, really understanding what people think and feel, and engaging with them back and forth. It's going to be critical for whatever we do down the road.
And if you look at what Andrew has done, and I don't want to say Andrew's name, but this position, I have seen how if you have an individual who has the ability to engage people in a professional manner, I think if you were to ask a lot of people in this community who our community or our communications consultant is, they would know because he's out there, he's kind of attached to me when I go out and we're just kind of a duo, but it's very, very important that you have a very competent person. The other word I would throw out there is stability. When you contract through Hamilton County, there's no guarantee from one year to the next who that individual is going to be. We can request, but you don't necessarily know. And so the ability to have a stable history, knowing how we're going through everything, I think is important as well. All the while, my history with dealing with FTEs, I always focus on FTEs. I want to make sure that we don't have the FTE creep, as I say, but sometimes you also have to, what you're talking about, Mr. Doherty, is you have to weigh FTEs versus actual cost as well. You know, when you have a contract, it may not be as an FTE, but it's a cost. And so if we're able to move forward with this, I would have a more detailed rationale and allow you.
The advantage, right, to the cost was when it was at the lower threshold of hours. Now that you've increased the hours, it's really going to end up being a win-win. We're already spending the money. Now we can spend it within the district, have that stability, have increased hours.
Right.
Maybe a slightly higher cost, but.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
An example, which is, it may be considered frivolous, although I don't think many people are thinking it's frivolous when they're about the Bengals going to the Super Bowl, but an example of an effort that was made to bring some attention to how we can benefit our students and how we can have a relationship with some of the municipalities around here was something that Mr. Setters did and helped us have that city council meeting where some Bengals were made honorary Loveland Tigers. And it was a feeling that you don't see very often, where you see school and city and, adults and students working together. And I think that's a benefit of this community engagement and the effort that public relations can do for the district and therefore for the students of the
Absolutely.
district.
That's a very good point.
We've all seen examples during the last year where he's tapped into the pulse of the community. And I think that results in better alignment between what we want to do from a school district perspective and what the real essence of the community is. And I think I give a lot of credit to Andrew for really being on top of a bunch of things that we don't normally talk about, but they've just happened.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a perfect example. If it's great when we as administrators don't have to generate ideas and they happen organically from that position, and it's community engagement, and it's just where we need to be as far as being out in the community engaging. So.
And I would add one more thing. Since that point in time that we chose not to fill the chief information officer role, we also did a manpower survey where the planning commission compared our administrative FTE spots to other districts, and we were not high. We were in the average to low versus elevated end. So this is not an example of Loveland having many too many administrators compared to other public school districts.
And it's not technically in his, his realm of responsibility, but, one of the things that he was very active in doing is bringing up the new website.
Yes.
And all the benefits that have come along with that. He's kind of been in the middle of a lot of that.
I will tell you, our building secretaries, he has pushed, you call them robocalls when students are absent, instead of a secretary sitting there dialing all the families, the unexcused absences, we can use the robocall system. Andrew is the one who was able to get the administrative assistants trained. And I was in the high school yesterday with the administrative assistant, and she was praising Andrew for getting that done because it freed up about 3 hours of her day. And that's big. That's the stuff, that's how schools run. And so I also like the fact that with this position, it's normally individuals that haven't been in schools for 30 years. They've got a different perspective and they can bring a different light onto how to communicate sometimes.
So we may end up with a couple of dollars more on the expenses. but this is a case where I think you get a lot of value for a relatively small amount of incremental dollars,
Yes,
I think.
yes.
Do you expect that this would come to the board at our next business meeting or perhaps in the March business meeting?
I would like to bring it at the next business meeting, which is February, if it's amenable.
And this is very common for school districts, correct?
Yes, yes. You'll see a lot of school districts, most school districts have that, especially the size of Loveland. You'll see other school districts have a more robust communications department, depending on the size. But yes, this is not an uncommon position. I think you make it an administrative position because as administrators, you can get them to show up in the evening, right? And you can get them to do some extra work, but that's the important piece too. Thanks.
For the folks who are, listening online, we do have administrators here who are smiling greatly at Mr. Broadwater's inferences there.
We have a group of 3 tonight, and often we will have 4
They
or
do all
5
day, yeah.
admins here.
And I would say when there wasn't somebody in that position, it was really pulling and taking away from the administrators that we do have, and they weren't able to focus in their areas where they needed to focus, correct?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Our buildings do a great job of putting communication out every week. Andrew's been able to train them a little bit in terms of what should be in there and what that voice should look like. And I think we've got a very unified, very rhythmic type communication going right now. And we just want to build on that, make sure we're continuing to do that. So the next business meeting, I'd like to bring that position.
Anybody else have any questions or suggestions?
Want to maybe clarifying, I don't know if you said this, but when you listed the number up there, what we're paying for him, just for if community people are paying attention,
Sure.
that's not his salary. That's what we're
Correct.
paying to the
Good point.
county. And if we have any additional costs, that's because of benefit costs.
Good point. Very good point. So the $113,040, his salary is there, his benefits, and then obviously Hamilton County is going to have a little bit of a surcharge for them, which I think is about a 5%. So yeah, very good point. Okay, we are not moving. If only we had a director of communications and community engagement.
No, technology and innovation.
go.
That's what was going to bring up that next.
Okay. What I've noticed in my short time here at Loveland City School District, the position of, I believe, was Director of Technology and Innovation was one of those administrative positions that was part of the cuts. We will have, Mr. Collier will present at the business meeting in regards to the history of FTEs and administrators. We are still going to be under the number of administrators prior. What we're noticing is we have a lot of assets that are technology here in the Loveland City School District. If I were to guess, it might be $4 or $5 million worth of technology. And right now we do not have a director of technology or innovation. What we are requesting is a coordinator of technology and innovation. So that, again, is a class level that would be down 1. So we're going to look at salary. The FTE, we believe, will be able to repurpose from other positions, so it will not be an increase in FTEs. If we can move forward with it, we'll be able to present that as well. But currently, there is no coordinator of technology and innovation. It's a position that we do have a job description for within Loveland City School District. It has not been filled recently. Kind of the way it's been working is our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Andrea Connor, and our business manager, John Ames, have kind of been tag teaming it and being able to put out all the fires. But in terms of being able to be forward thinking and innovative, that's tough because they've got other things that are under their purview as well. The second bullet, the position will not be an additional FTE due to a reappropriation of staff through attrition, whether it's resignations, retirements. Again, first thing we look at is class size, class teachers, making sure that we've got that all set, and then we can look at how we repurpose other FTEs. This position will support the implementation of technology, including devices, programs, and systems to ensure better alignment and efficiency as we move forward. And as all of you know, the days of just having a textbook that's a paperback have kind of gone by the wayside. A lot of the work is making sure that we don't have duplicate software, making sure we have the appropriate software license so that our kids have the appropriate textbooks and learning material. And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work day to day to make sure that we're providing everything we need to in terms of technologies for the kids. The fourth bullet supports student engagement and learning through professional development of staff and integration of technology. So if we have our third grade teachers that want to integrate a software, who do we have professionally developing right now? The answer would probably be Ms. Connor, and right now she is the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, which means she has quite a few responsibilities. So this individual, this position would be able to make sure that they're providing professional development and support for our staff in regards to the software. The fifth bullet, this position will serve as the supervisor of the Educational Technology Department, which is comprised of 4 technology support specialists that serve in the buildings. Then the last bullet, collaborate with the business manager and assistant superintendent of teaching and learning on technology needs. And so there'll still be purview from Mr. Ames and Mrs. Connor in regards to whether it be technology purchases, software purchases, how that's going to work into the curriculum. And that's the biggest thing that I can see is difficult is when you have so much online curriculum, how does it integrate into the standards set forth by the state of Ohio, and somebody being in charge of that and being able to supervise how that's going to look. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion. I did provide a job description at your desk there where it says Coordinator of Technology and Innovation. This is a work in progress. As we sit down, we will go through, but I think it gives you a pretty good skeleton of what we'll be looking for in this position with the Coordinator of Technology and Innovation. So with that, I will open it up for any questions or thoughts.
And again, I'll just remind board members that the way our job descriptions work, we past couple of years, overhauled them. And so in every job description, you see the first 3 categories. You see the general description of the job, you see the qualifications as far as certifications and degrees that are required, and then you see a set of professional expectations that are the same for all Loveland School District employees. And then you move into the essential duties and responsibilities of the position that are particular to this position.
Mike, I'm going to make an assumption here. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, but I know Eric and I have spent a fair amount of time with Mr. Giuffre and our treasurer, for anybody who's listening. And he has talked a lot about the need for improvements in our technology portfolio, that this is the technology that kind of runs the district.
Yes.
From an interest of, having better controls, having more efficiency, helping everything to run a bit better. And I'm assuming that this role that we're discussing right now this would be another reason, is where I'm going.
Yes.
To have somebody with this kind of a skill set to help the district raise its game and its capability from a technology and an efficiency perspective. The other thing that's come up a number of times, I know I've been concerned about it, is our reliance on cloud servers. YouTube is the best example of it, right? But there's a lot of stuff that resides, the data resides outside of the district. And we do things like that because it's easy, it's free at the moment. But there could come the day when another strategy would make sense for any number of different reasons. So having the skill, the knowledge again, to be able to think about issues like that, start to build the internal data storage capability when necessary, etc. Those are all the things that are going on inside of my head. So tell me if this is part of what you're thinking about in this job or not.
100%. If Mr. Giuffre was here, he would be jumping up and down saying yes. He's had some frustrations. It's not from anything that's not getting done. It's what we have due to the limited staff is the majority of the day is break fix, and we want to make sure we're taking care of the classrooms, right? That's our most important priority. priority. And so with the break fix, taking care of a lot of the technology support specialists, this position would be able to look forward, be forward thinking, sitting in the central office meetings as we discuss where we want to go, especially in a strategic vision process, which we all know innovation or technology is going to be a part of it. That's where the world is going, and being able to support where we want to go with that. But the frustration I'll say Mr. Giuffre has had is coming from other districts and seeing how we could have some better efficiencies. But right now, there's just not someone there because we're all doing our jobs, right? So, yes.
Thank you.
Not having this role can end up costing you a lot more money in the long run. You're not making the right choices in terms of technology and keeping on the right schedules. Makes a lot of sense.
That's a very good point. And it's when you have $4 or $5 million worth of assets, I think it's wise to invest on somebody directing that. Andrea and John have done a great job, but they have a lot under their purview. And so being able to have this position, again, we're looking at making it FTE neutral. So we believe we have a pretty good plan on how we can do that and also provide what needs we have in the central office. And then throughout the district, being able to provide that service for our teachers in the classroom as well.
So I know this was before your time, so somebody else feel free to chime in. How does this position differ from the one that David Knapp fulfilled before he was a building principal?
So Mr. Knapp was the director. So when Mr. Broadwater talked about the difference in the classes, that this is a coordinator role, which is not the same as the director role. I think a lot of the things that we see missing right now, if you think about what happened, we didn't fill that position as a part of that last levy failure, made that cut, and then the pandemic hit, and then we sent kids home with technology, and we got rid of the director of technology and innovation. So we've come back to school, and what has happened is we found this need to integrate more and more technology. Our teachers have been awesome. They figured out how to do more and more with the programs, which has caused that need to rise. You also remember last year, John and I giving regular updates, Chromebook updates about the technology plan that we've implemented of the actual devices that we're replacing. So we feel like that piece is in place pretty solidly for whomever would assume this position. What is missing is a bit of what our previous technology director did, which was help support that integration in the classroom. I think more than anything, our teachers are feeling that a bit, is that support's no longer there, right? And having kind of that oversight to do that, I can come in and swoop in and do kind of oh, well, we need this to happen. Somebody asked me in this building for this, this thing. Somebody over here asked me for this thing. But as far as having the capacity right now, Mr. Ames and I, to actually have a strategic look at it on top of our other responsibilities has become a bit of a challenge. And I believe our teachers would really benefit from having this coordinator position back in place. So when Mike talked about the difference in the director and the coordinator, that is a pay difference.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this has to do with the individual that you're able to find too, right? Making appropriate fit. And I think when you look at being able to integrate technology in the classroom, it's got to be somebody who's got experience in the classroom, somebody that knows how classrooms work, what teachers need, and being able to respond to that appropriately. So it'll be an important search if we're able to move forward with it. And again, we're looking at keeping it FTE neutral, hopefully cost neutral as much as possible. If we're able to move forward, we'll have a little cost analysis for you at the next board meeting, the business meeting, to give you an idea of what we're discussing.
Have you had any opportunity to, or would you, before the next meeting, have an opportunity to give us an idea of some of the surrounding districts? Do they have directors? Do they have
Sure.
coordinators? Do they have departments that would be bigger than this person? And I would assume that this person would supervise some of the people that we have doing some kind of work. In other words, somebody who might come and help us run the board meeting. That would be supervised by this person. But if we could have a little analysis of what other districts do and how this is the same or different, that would be great.
Good idea. I will do that.
Anything else for Director of Tech or Coordinator of Technology? Before we let Mr. Broadwater off the hook and before board members start thinking that they're always going to have really short work sessions because the only other thing on the agenda is a human resources. But I thought I would just mention that the policy work has begun on the side of the legal firm that's going to help us, but we're not ready to bring anything back to the board yet. But that would be work session work that this board would need to engage in. I believe the Planning Commission is meeting tomorrow evening, and then once that meeting happens, then we'll be moving on to some work with this board and what the future work of the Planning Commission is and how they would go about it. I just wanted to mention, I have one more thing, which I'm going to put Mr. Broadwater back on the hook for, but one other thing, which I'll mention, now that we're here in the Year of the Tiger, and you explained very well what you were doing on having the snow day on February 14th, so I don't have to have the Valentine ladies rise up and say you're canceling Valentine's Day. But I would just remind everybody that, ice and snowmageddon is coming starting tomorrow evening. So I've already seen things, social media posts saying, are we having school off Thursday and Friday? And I'm thinking we need to wait to see what the weather actually
I can
does,
predict
but-
Super Bowls. I can't predict.
But then the last thing I was going to put you back on the hook for was if you had any report to us on the strategic visioning and whether there were meetings scheduled yet. I know that Reverend Eilert has volunteered to be the point person from the board for the design team, but other board members had said they could be a part of that as we are allowed to have another board member. So I just wondered if you had a report on where we're going.
Absolutely. Full of good ideas this evening. It's good that we're reviewing this. We have our showcase is February 9th. We were out today. Julie Dunn, my administrative assistant, was putting out yard signs, fancy yard signs, and letting people know. We've got postcards going out, and they were put in the mailbox today. So community members should be receiving them shortly. Wednesday, February 9th is the showcase from 5:30 to 6 o'clock. I will be presenting along with Ms. Connor and Mr. Setters in regards to our portrait of a tiger, and also kind of outline what the strategic vision planning is. That is for community members at large. And then the showcase is that evening as well, where we like to kind of brag about everything we're doing. And I know we've got about 45 to 50 different groups that are going to be there, if that's correct, Andrea.
Yes, that's correct. We have, I think, as of almost 50 at this point with some of our outside organizations who's expressed interest.
Great. And then Tuesday, February 15th, which is the business board meeting, I will have a report on how that went in regards to how many community members showed up with the showcase, as well as what we did with the portrait of a tiger. Wednesday, February 23rd is going to be our second community meeting. And again, we will have information out and push that out as much as possible to our community so that our community members can show up. What we would then do that evening, we want to get feedback from the community members who are there, what type of, whether it's thought exchange or something like that, we want to be able to get all of the ideas that community members have so that when we go into our first design team meeting, we've got that and we can take a look at that. Some things that you can look forward to, and we'll get information out to parents. There are going to be student aspiration surveys for grades 4 through 12. We will make sure that we communicate with parents when that is going to happen. We'll make sure we communicate with parents what that looks like, what it is, let them know that if they would rather their child not do it, that is fine. There's opt-out. It's just a way of us to measure where our kids are. What are their hopes and dreams? What are their aspirations? So that we can kind of guide the strategic visioning. We'll do some self-assessments when it comes to our staff members, administrators, building leadership teams, and so forth. We will have our design team finalized By the end of February, I will have invites put out. I am meeting daily with individuals that we have met throughout the year to see the interest. Some individuals that ran for the board, we've had those individuals in. We continue to meet with those individuals. The community meetings that we listed, we will have community members that are there, the ability to apply to be on that design team. Obviously, we can't have 300 people, but we believe we could have about 125. And so we want our buildings to be able to have administrators, teachers, and kids at grades. I think we're going grades 7 through 12 for the kids on the design team, but we want to make sure that our buildings are represented, our community at large represented. And so we are going to make sure we put out as much information for community members if they would like to be a part, that they could come in and we could have a discussion and I could kind of outline what the process is so they understand it. And I enjoy all those conversations in person as much as possible. So in March 1st is our board work session. We'll report out where we are up to that point. March 10th, we have our first design team meeting with Colin Lewis, is the individual for kids. And that will be our first toe in the water in terms of the strategic vision. The 22nd of March, we have the board business meeting. So we'll report out in regards to that first design team meeting. In April 14th, we'll have design meeting 2 as Colin Lewis goes through that. And I'm excited for those because I get to participate. I'm going to sit, I'm going to listen. Mr. Lewis can direct it. Obviously, I'll be a big part of it, but I'm looking forward to participating and letting our kids, our staff, and our community direct where we see us going. On April 19th, we are going to break the larger design team down into writing teams. Once we have kind of an idea where we want to go with the vision, obviously you can't have 125 people in a room trying to write action steps. So it'll break down into writing teams. And there will be a couple of those, April 19th and April 27th. And then in May, we have a board work session on the 3rd. We will review everything up to that point. May 11th, we will meet with the writing team again. May 12th, the second writing team. May 16th, we will have our third and last community meeting where we would like to go over everything that we have done in the design. Again, have a thought exchange on what did we do well, what do we need to improve, what did we forget, so that the community at large can have the input. And again, we'll advertise that as much as possible. May 17th will be a business meeting. We'll report out to that. May 18th is the third design team meeting where we would hopefully be able to wrap up the document as much as possible. And then June 8th, our thought is we'll call it a gallery walk through, I guess, walk the showcase, where we would allow people to come in, walk through, see the documents, get one last look at it before we bring it to the Board of Education for approval, which we are looking for approval, probably the business meeting, which is June 28th. And that is probably more detail than you wanted, but that's where we are in terms of the dates and what it's going
I
to
was going to say, phew, that's what I was going to say. Get all that?
Mike, is that available online someplace, or can you make it available online?
what I just went through?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to, once we're going to sit down and solidify everything that we have. Obviously, we're not going to give you as much verbiage, but we'll get the dates. The postcard that's coming out has some of these dates, but we'll get a more condensed calendar of events that we can kind of get out to you.
I think, if I understand correctly, Andrew will be taking some of these within the next week or so and putting them on the website under like strategic visioning so people can see where we are in the process.
Yeah, it'd be helpful, I think, if people understood a little bit of the macro, maybe not every single meeting, but the flow of this would be helpful for everybody.
Good idea. I think that's a good idea. What we could do on one of my newsletters, weekly, we can kind of put out that skeleton of dates as well. The nice thing is I think we've got a pretty good cadence on how to get some communication out. And I would encourage any community member that's listening or watching, we would love to have as many people as possible at those community meetings, simply because I know all the great ideas come from discussion, and I welcome all that.
So I think it's important that the community does understand that this is a cornerstone project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a 5-year vision. In my mind, when we get done, I would love to have a 5-year vision, because I think to have sustainable change in an educational institution takes 3 to 5 years. So I would love to have a vision that's 5 years and we put our nose to the grindstone and we get it done. And that would be, I don't know if that's a lofty goal, but that's what I would love to.
But one would think that coming out of this will be the basis for a lot of conversation,
Absolutely.
a lot of decisions about where the district turns, what we do, what we don't do
Right.
in the future. This is the opportunity to get everybody's thoughts out on the table and arrive at something that becomes the plan.
This is it. I would love to have as much participation. I can tell you the conversations I've had individually have been all very respectful and all coming from different avenues, and I welcome that very much. I enjoy that. That's how we learn, and learning from each other. That's just only going to make us stronger as a community and as a school district. And it's important that we get it right this time, to your point. It's important we get it right this time because it is the cornerstone, hopefully, for the next 5 years. So we want to make sure people feel included, and we want to make sure our kids are included. We want to make sure we hear from our kids.
I'd say the two positions you just outlined are great examples of why this is important work. The work that those two positions will do will be much better with the strategic plan in hand to help guide what they're doing.
Absolutely.
What the priorities are.
Absolutely. Good point.
And I would also use the opportunity to kind of echo what Kevin said and what you emphasize as a big part of this process, which is in the past, especially as we had the last levy, one of the complaints was community members who said, we didn't feel like we were included or we didn't know what was going on, despite all of our attempts to include them. This is a perfect opportunity. If you are in the community and you hear this, we want your input. We want you to be a part of this. And we're going to try our hardest to make sure everybody hears that message.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, really important because I think that we are now deficit spending. I think Mr. Giuffre confirmed that for me the other day. So the cash excess that we have enjoyed is going to start to come down. And guess what that means? At some point down the road, we're going to start to have discussions about how do we finance this district, levies, other means, whatever it turns out to be. But the work that you are doing on this plan, the engagement of the community, will set up a broad context for what the financial framework of the future is.
Yeah, I think I described it this way the last meeting, but in order to set a household budget, you need to know what you're doing, right? Or how many times we go into the movie? Are we going to eat out 3 times a week? What are we going to do? And you have to have a plan right now. I need a plan. I need to know what this community wants for our kids. Doesn't mean it's more money. Doesn't mean it's less money. It means we're changing, and it's just like being able to have the positions requested without additional FTEs. We're not asking for a lot of additional funds. We're asking for reappropriation of skills and talents, and that's what the strategic vision is all about. Where do we want to go with our skills and talents? And we all know this world's changing faster than we can keep up with it, and so we need to be ready for that.
Just as we are encouraging everyone to pay attention and be a part of the strategic planning and get their input in, I'll go back to the very first date that you mentioned and emphasize that February 9th and the showcase. As you said, there'll be an early presentation of Portrait of a Tiger, but the showcase itself, it has been somewhat hampered in recent years by a pandemic. This evening started as what was originally the superintendent's state of the district presentation. And while it was a very good presentation, a very good opportunity for the district to say where we were, it has changed into something that I think is a really important event in the life of Loveland Schools, and that's this showcase. So if you haven't had the chance to go, make sure you drop in. It is not an evening where you have to go and you have to show up at a certain time and be there all evening, but you should stop in and be amazed by what you see. Good chance to wear your new name tag.
Just don't lose them.
Yeah.
And it's a good chance to see what the students are doing, because it is, as it has been, I don't think it's going to be different this year. It is a student-centered presentation. And so you get to see what the kids are doing, and that's always quite fun.
So Dr. Lorenz, I wanted to clarify for everybody, the actual showcase runs from 6 to 7:30 p.m. and that's at the high school. There will be 2 community sessions that evening. Both are repeat. So if you can't make the 5:30 session, there will also be a 6:30 session. And you'll just come in what I always say is the back, which is the front of the high school, which is confusing. But you go to the back, which is the front, and then we will have plenty of students there to help kind of direct where you would go for the community meeting event. But you'll have, so if you're, trying to get off work and haven't had a chance to get there, but you can make the 6:30, it'll be a repeat session that night.
That's February 9th, right?
That's February 9th, next Wednesday.
And my apologies, I won't be there. I have a Great Oaks meeting that evening, but I do encourage everyone to come just because it's such a valuable evening.
Yeah, it's fun to listen from kids. You don't have to listen to the superintendent too long. It's fun to listen to kids. It's not like the old state of schools where we do PowerPoint presentations. It's just a lot of fun with the kids. And I would like to thank Andrea especially and Susan Craig for helping us. It's a lot of work to get it going, and Andrew has helped as well. And thank all of those that have volunteered to be present and be available and kind of brag about their program, because I'm looking forward to it. As being fairly new, it's going to let me know everything we're doing as well. So it should be a fun night.
Great. Is there anything else that the board wishes to ask the superintendent as part of his update? Any updates of their own?
I was going to make just a quick comment, and you already touched on it though. And I just wanted to say it is the year of the tiger, which only happens every 60 years. So I wanted to wish people out there a happy Chinese New Year today. I know it's a very big holiday and big celebration. And the tiger is action-oriented, represents strength, bravery, and clearing away evil. So I just think that that is a good way for us to think of our tigers, because they are very action-oriented and they do represent strength and bravery. So it seems very appropriate right now.
I like it.
I actually have it's a sort of a stuffed animal, sort of a scarf that has a big tiger head on it. And I was going to wear it, but I sent a picture to Mr. Broadwater with it around my neck, and he said it was so I thought I'd wear it to the meeting, but you may see me out and about with it wrapped around. I don't want to disturb like the whole.
No comment.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the action item on the agenda. So appropriate now for a motion to approve resolutions of the Director of Human Resources. And I believe there's just one item under here. So it would be a position for the 2021-2022 school year. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Swetchenow moved. Is there a second?
Second.
And Reverend Eilert seconded. Mr. Collier, do you have a report for us before we ask any questions?
Yeah, it's the only thing listed here. As you see, we have a high school assistant principal where at the last meeting, we talked about a resignation. In this, what you have here in front of you is the recommendation for Mary Beth Corbin to be the interim LHS assistant principal. And I will be glad to answer any questions that anybody has about that.
Any questions or discussion? So this is to round out and would start immediately.
Yeah, actually, she started yesterday. And you'll remember that we talked at our meeting last week. And I was able to talk with her, and I know that Mrs. Connor was able to see her as well. She's had a great 2 first days with us. In the high school administrative team and support team is very glad to have her there. And I think she's going to fit in well with our group. We're very excited.
So Garth, just from an administrative perspective, you have the ability to have her start before we pass this motion, and it's subject to this motion being passed, right?
That's correct. Yeah, the superintendent, and then of course me being correct.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, Ms. Massey, can we vote on that?
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mr. Dougherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. Is there any other business that needs to come before this Board of Education this evening? I see that administrators are like the students in my classroom. They're packed up and ready to go. No, I'm picking on them. All right, then we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Dr. Swetchenow moved, and I'll second. And it's really not a debatable motion. So Ms. Massey, can we vote on that?
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Dougherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. I have us adjourned at 7:05. Thank you all.